Hi there, and welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son sit down and talk about fantasy books. I'm the son of that equation, Zach.
And I'm the father, Jim. Great to have you with us again for another one of our Wheel of Time episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fun stuff to talk about today, but, we'll get to that. First of all, Zach, I want to know how you're doing.
I'm doing pretty well. About halfway through the episode, I should get a little bit of a different experience going on, that's a very weird way to lead into this.
I want to know where you're going. Yeah, what?
I bought a candle recently just because I like candles sometimes, and I lit it a little while back. But I have a very, very weak sense of smell. Always have. So I imagine it'll be still another like hour of burning before I can actually smell it. So hopefully halfway through this episode, I'll be able to smell some nice whiskey and tobacco smells filling up my place.
Or there'll be a fire in your place and you have to suddenly leave the apartment.
No, I can see the fire. It's fine.
Okay.
How are you doing, Dad?
I'm doing well. Sorta. I spent time before the episode today doing my taxes. Finally, getting to it. I'm not done. I don't think I'll owe anything. I think I paid in enough and stuff. Maybe I'll get a little back. We'll find out. But there's a key difference that I had to click a box on.
Did
you
not
are no longer my dependent?
Good. Yeah. I haven't done my taxes yet, but I was planning to mark myself as an independent.
Yeah.
Would have been a little awkward if I did that and you claimed me.
Basically, you only lived with us for 7 months of the year, and you made way too much money this year. So we can't claim you. You're on your own. Fly, little bird, fly. But that means one less deduction. Dang it. But we've been enjoying some of the perks. Like, we don't go through nearly the same amount of grocery money anymore.
That's good. Sorry, I ate a lot.
You didn't really, though, so I don't know.
I don't know how you managed that.
So that's it. This is a calm before a storm. I leave for work, another work trip again tomorrow. But it's nice to have a Saturday. Just relax, do some podcast work, keep hopping on our Try-Reader tournament, which has been really fun so far. A lot of those great nostalgic book picks that we've been exploring and watching people cheer for. Jordo is with us in the Discord today. Mm-hmm. He's in today's voting, actually. Yeah, and last I looked, he was leading, but there's still like over half the 24-hour period to go.
Time.
Jordo. And the rest of you, we love all our Twitter followers. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Jordo.
I'm just excited to see who wins. Definitely excited to see some of those picks in there. The Percy Jackson showing up was nice.
Yeah.
Just, it feels nice to be there.
Absolutely.
Do I think it should win? But I like that it's there.
And a few extra people now have jumped into our Discord to talk about these books, these nostalgic picks. So that's a plug I'll throw in here. We do have a great Discord server where we share our love of fantasy and sci-fi books with other interested readers and listeners. Look for the invitation in our show notes. Hop in, talk to us about Wheel of Time and any other fantasy and sci-fi books that you enjoy. Plus, show your pets.
That's always
talk
a good
about
one.
The weather. Whatever's on your mind. We have odds and ends in various channels there. So, the next thing we usually talk about is drinking. Do you have anything you're drinking today, Zach?
I'm keeping it simple. Just drinking a beer. Nothing fancy, but I bet you've got a Wattail for us.
I do. I created one today. Now, I couldn't go too strong because your mom has plans. We have to go run some errands after this. Yep. So I'm like, I don't want to.
You don't want to
drink and drive inappropriate. I could make her drive, but I just made something really light and easy anyways and not very big. This is called the Wave Dancer. Thus, it had to be blue. You can guess what made it blue.
Toilet bowl cleaner.
Wow, it is that color. But no, what is wrong with you? Now, blue curacao, and then added to it some Malibu rum and peach schnapps with a little sour mix. That's it. Simple. On ice.
It tastes like the sea. Well, maybe not the sea, but definitely a beach.
No, much better than the sea. I've had seawater in my mouth.
Yeah, that's brine of that. Not so good.
Icky. Yeah. All right, let's do some notes before we move into our chapters today.
What do we got?
Well, first, we're still basking in the fun that was
Oh, yeah.
recording our 100th episode, our musical episode. People haven't seen that yet, except for our Patreon supporters.
Now, if you're listening to this, you've probably seen it by now because this comes out after.
Yes,
but
yes.
not when we are recording it.
Right. We tend to record things about an hour. I don't know where that came from. Okay, my watch distracted me. That's where it came from.
We record things 1 hour before those episodes come out.
That's a turnaround time. Wow.
Turnaround time.
Very impressive. No, we tend to record things a week to a week and a half ahead of time. It gives me time to make sure we didn't make any big mistakes. And for the audio version, I do a little cleaning up some of the gaps and stuff. So, yeah, that was last weekend that we recorded it. And now this coming Wednesday, that's going to drop. So, if you're watching this when it releases, then it was the most recent episode, which makes this episode 101.
Woo!
The second 100 that we're moving into
in
now.
Triple digits.
Yes. But the musical episode was a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed it if you've already watched it now. We did make fools of ourselves, but only in the best and most delightful ways.
Definitely.
I do want to reference some changes that are coming to our content. That I did drop a little 5-minute video on our YouTube channel explaining. Some people have seen it already, but if you haven't caught it, go watch it. If you're an audio listener only, you're not going to get this little thing. I'm not dropping it in the audio feed, so you got to go find it on YouTube if you want to know what it's about. But in essence, in short, I'll mention simply that we're going to keep doing content just like we've been doing, the same pace and rate, but we're going to be changing some of the focus of it. Mostly, this guy next to me, you're not going to see quite as much because he's getting busy.
Less.
Yeah. Going back to school is coming up and other life things he's got to take care of. So we'll be doing our Wheel of Time episodes now more typically every other week instead of every week. And so Zach will be here for those.
I'll still be here a lot and plenty, but not necessarily every episode.
So I'll be filling in some of the other content with different sorts of things and bringing in some guests sometimes. Sometimes it'll be just me and whoever joins me on Discord. But I'll also look to bring in some guests. And I'm going to be moving into a new series during a few of these. Something I loved. I'm going to be doing book reviews on the Dresden Files. So the 17 books, that's 17 episodes of content I'm able to do. If you have been thinking about reading the Dresden Files and you haven't yet, this would be a fantastic time to start.
I know I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm done before you release those so that I get to watch them and enjoy.
The first episode will drop the first Sunday of April. So there's your time frame to get the first book done. A few of our Discordians have already done it. They got it on it this week and they're already done. So Stormfront, book 1, does not take very long.
Nice,
really
good
good read.
Yeah.
All right, one last thing I want to put in here. We've been doing these episodes now, over 100 of them. As we've said, this is 101. We need some more reviews, specifically Apple Podcast, where a lot of people find their content. We have 2 written reviews. We've got a few more ratings, but only 2 written reviews.
It's 2 more than none. We appreciate those 2.
And they're positive reviews. We liked them. Yeah, thank you. But to get better known, we need a little more help. So we want people to write some reviews. You know, you can go ahead and create your own Apple content or Apple ID. Those are free. And get in there and write a review. You don't ever have to go back again. Just do it to put in a review. And we're going to bribe you. Because I know it's asking you to take an extra step. Okay. So
Notably, we're not going to bribe you to only write good reviews.
No,
we
sort
like
of
those.
No, if you only want to write a bad review, I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm not. So here's the deal. We've mentioned we have a merch shop with just a couple of things on there, and some people have bought our coffee mugs, our frosty mugs, and we plan to add more in there. But specifically right now, we're going to give away 2 frosty mugs. based on people taking the time to put a review into Apple Podcasts. Now, I don't know where they'll be, when they do these reviews. It's easy for us to ship stuff in the US, a little more expensive in Canada, but we can do it. If someone in Ghana, we've got listeners in Ghana, if one of them does a review, I'll find out what it takes to ship the Frosty mug all the way over there.
We will
But
find a
here's the
way.
deal. Let's be clear. If you do a review, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a Frosty mug. It means you go into the giveaway drawing. So anybody who does a new review on Apple Podcast between now and the end of April, so April 30th, where we'll put you in the drawing. And then we hit May 1st, we'll draw 2 names. And if we don't know who you are, we'll be asking. We'll say, hey, okay, 59 5K SSL, whoever you are. Yeah, let us know.
Get in contact with us, DM us on Discord. We'll be in talks and we'll figure it out.
If you want to know what these mugs look like, find our merch shop on New Creations by Jen. Again, a link is in the show notes, and see what we are giving away. Kind of fun. So there you go. Get in there. Give us a review. It does have to, for the giveaway, be linked to a 4 or 5-star rating. So a little generous. I'm not saying you have to give us 5 stars, but you have to think we're at least good enough for 4. If you don't think we're that good, don't bother. I don't want any false reviews, but if you believe we're worth a 4 or 5, give us the star rating, write a review, you go in the drawing. That's it. There you go.
All right.
It's kind of bribery. There you go. Well, shall we get into our Wheel of Time chapters, Zach?
Let's do it. We've got, what, 2 this time?
Just 2.
So it should only be 2 hours. Got it.
They're both very connected. They will not be 2 hours. Chapter 19 and 20. We start with 19, of course. That's called The Wave Dancer. Of note, Wave Dancer is in a different slant. Like the titles are usually always in italics. So if you're reading, Wave Dancer is not. It's in normal font, indicating it means something specific.
It's a proper noun.
Yes. And we'll find out exactly what momentarily. We join up with Elaine and Nynaeve, arriving by carriage from the Stone of Tyr down to the docks at the River Aranon. And we're in Elaine's POV for this chapter. And this is taking place time-wise right around what we had last time when
Fael and Fael and the Ideal all went out to the Waygate.
They were getting ready to leave the city. Yep. So here they are. We're experiencing this the way Elaine is. And here are her thoughts early on, right in the chapter. The Terran High Lords suck.
That's accurate, but why?
Well, the carriage that they just rode down to the docks on was provided for them, but it's an anonymous carriage. None of the Terran High Lords want to be associated with Aes Sedai. So it's like the discount cheapo model that was sitting in the corner of the carriage house that they said, sure, you can use this. It's got no curtains. It doesn't seem to have any shocks left. It was a horrible ride.
It's a carriage. It's functioning. But, I mean, you'd be more comfortable riding just a horse.
Oh, absolutely. Jordo says in Discord it was rickety. It's a good term for it. And they are feeling it. Also, she's thinking the Terran High Lords suck for the way they have failed to care for the common people. Now that they're down at the docks, she's looking around and people look downtrodden. Nobody seems to have any pride or respect. Yeah. They just seem worn, beaten people. And she's been raised to rule in Andor. You take care of your people.
It's very different.
She's been taught. Yeah.
We flash back here just as a reader to the conversation Rand was having with some of these High Lords about taxes and, the people will get used to it. There will be riots when there's back. It's like, okay, maybe they need a break because they are beaten down. These people are oppressed.
And she certainly thinks to herself here then that, doggone it, Rand better fix this. I gave him advice. He better take it. If I come back and this is just as bad as before, he's going to get a piece of my mind. That's kind of what she's thinking. Now, they've come to the docks for a particular ship, Zach. Not any old ship. Do you recall which ship they've come for? Not by name. We don't know the name yet, but what ship are they looking for?
I believe we do know the name of the type of ship, though.
Yes.
Which is that it is a raker. This is specifically a sea folk ship. It's meant to be kind of the fastest and most ocean traveling of vessels. There are some flaws in the idea to take this boat, but it's the idea of if they're going to go from Tyr to Tanjiko, this is going to be their fastest boat.
Yes. Moraine had suggested this because nothing can go faster than a sea folk ship. This is the only sea folk ship in the port right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to find.
We recently had heard that the sea folk weren't really coming into port very much, and they only recently started maybe bringing a ship or two back. So it's kind of fortuitous.
Yes. So Moraine has given them some guidance. We're gonna see that shortly. She's kind of prepped them for how to try to get a ride on this ship. Most people don't know a lot about the sea folk. We don't know a lot about the sea folk yet.
Not yet.
This whole chapter and the next is going to reveal these awesome people.
At least some of it.
Before we get to that, we're going to deal with the carriage just a little bit more. Because, okay, Elaine got out. Now Nynaeve is getting out. And she is feeling ornery. In fact, she drops an insult at the driver for his almost ironic. You're so skilled at finding every freaking hole and dip and... She's not happy. Elaine, she shows a little more compassion and kindness to the carriage driver, gives him a healthy payment for riding and says, I know you did your best. We did tell you to get down here as fast as possible. It's kind of hard to find out the smoothest route when you're told to make haste.
So it's kind of like if I were to take an Uber across off-road gravel roads and then complain about it being a little shaky.
Yeah, very much like that. Now, Elaine is taking the high road. I mean, she knows it wasn't a very pleasant ride either, but she understands his reasons. Nynaeve just likes to vent.
It's not this guy's fault. It's somebody's fault, not this guy's.
And as the driver pulls away, then Nynaeve, she owns up to it. Yeah, I shouldn't have snapped at him. That was kind of inappropriate. I'm just feeling a little short-tempered because that was such a horrible journey. Now, I want to ask you something, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
Elaine has a comment in response. And I want to know if you think there's anything more to this we should be reading into it. She says, it isn't his fault that you have a sore back. Anything we should be getting from that?
Well,
I don't, because she doesn't mean back. That's why she paused.
Implying it's definitely not her back.
Right.
I don't recall us necessarily knowing of a specific instance where.
I mean, knowing Robert Jordan,
pain would cause that to occur, but
did Nynaeve get spanked? This is kind of what I was wondering. Is her butt sore for some reason that we should be thinking of? That's what it seems to
maybe kind of imply, but I'm also like, we don't have any context for that.
Yeah, I went and looked back and I was like, did we miss something? And I couldn't find anything to give us a reason we would understand that her bottom is sore. I mean, we know she had harsh words for Lan when last.
Yeah, so my thought was maybe, was there something between them? Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? I
don't know.
It definitely led to a left in a huff. They didn't see each other again until we're here now. So I don't know if anything did happen. It definitely didn't.
Did she go crossways with some of the Aiel and they taught her a lesson?
I mean, I definitely think Ruark would not be against necessarily doing that. However,
we also Elaine got that.
the ideal and how they've been treating Aes Sedai is a bit different.
Right, right. So yeah, we don't really know. It just struck me as an odd comment there, and maybe, I'd love to know if any of our listeners have thoughts or ideas on that. I know many of you have read the whole series as well, and you may have insights. I admit, I actually researched this one to see, is there anything out there people have been saying and didn't find it. So, just an odd thought. There's one more setting of the stage here then.
Mm-hmm.
Nynaeve snips at Elaine over how much coin she actually gave to the carriage driver.
Oh, yeah, she gave him a nice tip.
And Elaine thought it was perfectly appropriate. Nynaeve's like, holy cow, you can't be giving away that much coin. And RJ is reminding us here again of the different perspectives these women have on life because of their backgrounds, their upraisings. You got Nynaeve from a small country farm town. You've got Elaine, who's Andorran royalty. That's going to impact many decisions they make in the months, years ahead, if there are years. And first-time readers definitely should remember that.
It's not even just their actions, choices, and how they handle their money even, but the very views on what money means and how much is a lot and all these things are very skewed perspectives.
That makes sense. Yep. They're very different from each other. And it's going to have an ongoing impact on the story. Now, it's time for some decisions. We got to get busy. One of the decisions we've got to move on to is trying to get a sea folk ship to decide to let these girls go to Tanchico with them. Heck, to get a ship to go to Tanchico. Because there's no guarantee it's already headed that way.
Yeah, it's not as easy as being like, oh, you're magically already going to Tanchico? Can I just, hop aboard?
It could be, but let's see what they find out. So they head to the dock where the sea folk raker is up against, and we learn a number of initial things about these Atha'an Mier, the sea folk, as they're approaching. Here's what Elaine is seeing and remembering. First of all, they have a reputation for being touchy until they know you. You got to say things a certain way. You've got to follow proper protocols.
Notably, when we say touchy, we're meaning standoffish touchy, not putting their hands on you touchy.
Yeah, no. Easily offended touchy. This goes hand in hand with them also being a very secretive people. They keep to themselves. So their interactions with people who aren't sea folk are very limited, and you need to follow certain mannerisms with them if you want to have those interactions.
Yeah. Putting all that together, it's fair to say the sea folk are generally slow to warm.
And since they're called sea folk, Zach, of course, we know they spend a lot of time at sea.
Correct. They will go from port to port, and even sometimes not on the main land. We know they have settlements out on islands somewhere, but not a whole lot's known about that. There's not a lot of travel out to them. Rather, they do a lot of the travel to elsewhere.
They are a vital cog in the international trade scene.
Without them, the economies of a lot of places.
Yep. They even go to some of the locations that nobody else can go to, such as the lands beyond the Aiel Waste. Kyrian used to trade through the waste, but can't do that anymore.
Yeah, then Layman was lame and cut down a tree.
Yeah, so the Atha'an Mier are the only ones who are getting over there, doing trading and bringing things back. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. We get a physical description. Dark-skinned, men described as barefoot and bare-chested, no beards, straight black hair, tattoos on their hands. That's a very common thing. Women described very much the same, except not bare-chested. They wear loose, colorful blouses. Both the men and women are described as having lots of jewelry. It varies from person to person, but chains and earrings, necklaces, are very common. And some of the women even have rings in their noses.
Yeah, there's a couple of fun things to note, really, that I enjoy. One, women wearing pants, because that's duh. And two, those nose rings, the extra earrings, and even some chains connecting ears to
Yeah.
noses. It's very ornamental, but in a cool, different from anything else way that we've seen.
Elaine, however, is feeling more like, ew, stuff in your nose and shades, and not necessarily feeling cool, feeling a little like off put. Not her thing. A little shocked to see some of that jewelry.
Culture
But
shock.
of course, if Elaine's shocked at that, just wait. Nothing yet. It's coming. Looking over the ship and its crew, they identify a couple of key things that stand out. One, Elaine sees there's no tiller. Now, Zach, do you know what a tiller is?
Tiller is the thing that kind of sticks up the back that you can hold on to and turn the actual rudder in the back to steer the ship. It's
Correct.
common on medium-sized vessels, ones that aren't rowed necessarily, but like a sailboat will often have something tiller-ish.
It's common on anything that she's familiar with to this point. So she looks at this ship and she sees no tiller. She's like, how do they steer this thing? She does see something that to us as readers is very recognizable.
Yeah,
She sees
a wheel. It's just a normal. This is a ship. It's got a wheel. The rudder is connected down below, and there is no like external mechanism, but rather it's a little bit more internal.
Right. These days, you see the navigation wheel, and everyone knows instantly what that means.
It's a boat.
You want to decorate your room in a nautical theme. You slap one of these up on a wall. It's perfect. They have no context. She's never seen one of these before, but it's on a sea folk ship.
Now, the Athan Mir actually have a better understanding of the world than like any other people. So all of their wheels on their boats have 7 spokes. It's quite interesting.
Nice.
That's not factual. Don't check me on that.
The other thing that jumps out to them is that 2 of the women are dressed a little finer. Similar in look, but finer material, have little fancier jewelry as well. And they're not all busy doing stuff around the ship. They're standing off to the side together. And of course, the girls figured these must be the people we need to go talk to.
It'd be really funny if they weren't.
No, but they are. So these 2 women, Elaine and Nynaeve, go on to the, climb up the boarding ramp and go up to these women. And they introduce themselves using everything Moraine has taught them about the sea folk. Now, that includes a bunch of flowery language that is apparently part of how you interact if you're an Aes Sedai speaking to Athan Mir.
Sounds like a lot of red tape and BS.
It also, in the particular words we get to read, it highlights that, again, our girls are still posing as formal Aes Sedai.
Such posers.
And they claim green Aja this time. I don't remember if that's what they had done before. I think Elaine had. I don't remember if Nynaeve was green before or not.
Elaine and Egwene had been posing green. Egwene said it in the dream to Amis.
So maybe they had all been green?
But I think probably they all just were kind of thinking that.
Okay.
Don't know if it was actually established, though.
So now they formally request passage, though the location is not initially noted in their opening statements. The women respond with flowery language and their formal names and titles, which are really long and fancy and complicated. And I'm not going to bother repeating them here for the podcast.
Darn.
Now I'm going to abbreviate. So we got these 2 women. One, and I didn't look up how to pronounce these, and I haven't listened to the audiobooks now for a little while, but I'm going with Coin. Simply Coin.
I don't believe that's going to be what's said anywhere else, but I'm okay with it because I think it's funny.
It could be
Jordo like
saying Coin.
It
could be Coin.
Somewhere in there. But I like Coin. I think it's
Coin
funny.
Seems kind of cheap, though. Get it?
Nah. It's quite valuable. Coin it is.
Jordo's going, no, not Coin. Well, Coin is the sail mistress of this ship. And we learn the name of the ship is the Wave Dancer, just like the title of the chapter.
Oh, that's the proper noun. There we go.
Yes. Her sister, the other woman, is Joran, the Windfinder of the Wave Dancer. So we've got two official positions that are being introduced: the Sail Mistress, the Windfinder.
Now,
Coin.
I don't recall, is it ever fully established that these two are actually blood-related sisters, or just they refer to them as sister?
No, they say sister of the blood. They are blood
Cool.
related. Yeah.
Just wanted to establish that, because like Aes Sedai call each other sisters. They're not.
Nah, these are. Jordo's still trying to get us to say it different. Coin now. How about Coin? Anyways, Coin's the one doing the talking. And responds that, yes, passage may be available. And invites them inside. Let's talk. Now, one more significant note from this initial interaction, which first-time readers should definitely hang on to, is that Elaine is surprised to learn these women are sisters. She actually sees the family resemblance, but there seems to be a significant age gap. I mean, the one who's talking seems much older than the Windfinder. And also that something about this Windfinder reminds her of Avienda. She kind of wishes the Windfinder was the one they were talking to more, because it just feels like an affinity to her, some connection almost. Not that she looks anything like Avienda.
No. But hang on to those. We'll be back to them before the end of this episode. It's important to note.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So, as they're getting, invited to come on down, it's because Nynaeve has asked that they speak more specifically about this gift of passage. Now, Zach, can you explain for us what this whole thingamabob is when you ask for the gift of passage from an Athayan Mir?
When you ask it from an Athayan Mir, or
you're asking for the gift of passage?
Basically, you can't buy your way on a ship. You can't buy passage. They don't do that. They don't trade in human trafficking. They just don't. I mean, that's...
Whoever said anything about human trafficking? What?
In the harshest terms, that's what passenger cargo is. Human trafficking. Could be consensual and agreed upon, but it is.
No, that is a fail.
If you move
We're never calling it human trafficking.
If you move people from one place to another.
Uber isn't a human trafficking? Is this what you're trying to tell me? No.
Sure it is.
Dude, shut up.
Point is, you can't buy it. You can buy things from them, but you cannot buy a place on their ship. Rather, you can talk about and work around things and end up kind of buying, but to actually try to buy a place on a ship is a great offense.
Right. Moraine has explained to them that, when you ask for the gift of passage, you also offer a gift in turn. It needs to be a significant enough gift to be appropriate for the gift you're receiving of passage. But they're all gifts. No one pays. Just this great coincidence that there's all this gift.
Yeah, it's a very weird necessitation of gift reciprocity. But we're going to say they're gifts.
So, down in the cabin of the ship, continuing the conversation, Nynaeve is going to do the talking for the girls. The book, again, Elaine's mindset, it's saying that they'd agreed that Nynaeve would be the spokesperson because she's the older of the two. Now, in my opinion, I'm like...
Nynaeve said it and Elaine didn't fight it too much.
Yeah. Nynaeve's that take charge kind of person. But Elaine already breaks that agreement as they enter the room they're going to have this conversation in, because she sees a very familiar soldier's helmet sitting there on display.
Yeah.
Partly damaged. And just out of her mouth comes, Shanshin.
Oops.
And the women do turn to her and say, oh, you're familiar with them, are you? Yes, we had an encounter last year with a Shanshin ship out at sea. And we came out on top. They seem to have wanted to take our ship, and we chose not to let them. Now, that's a very surprising thing, that they they chose not to let them, that they won an
Yeah.
encounter with the Shan-Chen ship. Why, Zach? Why is that surprising?
Well, what we learned previously and what is very on Elaine and Nynaeve's minds is that the Shan-Chan weaponized channelers. They capture and enslave women who can channel and turn them into weapons. In fact, they're pretty important on their boats. Bail Doman saw this firsthand. So to imagine that this ship fought them and won goes, that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, they could have flung a tidal wave at you.
Maybe they're just really good sailors.
Nynaeve simply goes, oh, must have been really lucky that you faced one of the ships that didn't have a damane on it that could channel at you. And the sea folk don't give any response to that at all.
Not to be a massive nerd, but flinging a tidal wave at somebody in the middle of the ocean isn't going to do much. It's only going to crest at the actual shore. So, sorry. That was my
big little wave.
Like,
hey, have you not seen the Poseidon Adventure?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Tidal wave in the middle of the ocean, man.
Could it happen? Sure. Is it likely to happen and do that big of a bad thing?
Probably not. You're right. All right, let's get down to business. They invite Nynaeve and Elaine to have a seat at a table. Now, this is the kind of furnishings that are common in a ship that, rocks in the waves and sometimes can face storms. Everything's bolted down. So table is bolted down in the room, center of the room. There are table or chairs around it that are connected to the floor. You can't move them. You just kind of squeeze into them.
And so furniture is part of the room.
Right. The girls both get on the same side of the table, sitting side by side. That's where they were, gestured, have a seat. And then the two sea folk women, one sits at one end of the table, the other sits at the other end.
Elaine notices this and notices it as a specific negotiation technique, and I love it for its cleverness.
Tell me why. What's so advantageous about that?
It necessitates that while they're having a conversation, if one takes the point, they can be engaged in this conversation and looking this way, but the other one is free to study them, do whatever they need or want, relatively unobserved.
Yeah, definitely could provide an advantage when you're trying to gauge reactions, check for honesty, see if anyone flinches over something that's said, and et cetera, et cetera. And Elaine wonders, is this what they do with everybody? Or is this just because they're Aes Sedai?
¿Por qué no los dos?
Now, before they talk anymore, another sea folk woman comes into the room bearing tea for them all and brings
That's not all she's bearing.
Nice. Yeah. What do you mean? Because Elaine is shocked. Nynaeve's like, very inappropriate kind of snort. What's the deal, Zach?
Oh, she's at least shirtless.
Yes. Topless for sure, and didn't sound like she had all that much on below, but she was clothed down there. And she doesn't get a very positive reaction from the sailmistress. What do we learn from this exchange that Nynaeve and Elaine get to observe between the boss and one of the workers?
Well, I personally learned that they're very clever and put these two outsiders on their back foot, and it was all prearranged and definitely a ploy. But that's just what I read into it because I think that's probably true. I have zero proof of that. What we do learn is that at least when at shore, docked, all of that, the women are clothed. That may not be the case all the time. What else are you trying to get from me?
No, that was good.
Okay, I feel like there's more.
No, we will pay attention to that. But yes, they clearly, chastised her, can you see land? Then what are you doing like this?
Now it goes a step further. Her punishment is then to go clean out the bilges and do that until they can't see land, because you won't need clothes there.
Yep. All right, moving beyond this, they get to the details about the passage that's being asked for, and some fascinating things occur here. First off, they reveal that their desired destination is Tanchico, and that they hope to make best possible speed, asking the wave dancer to consider bypassing all other ports, just take them straight there as fast as possible. And as part of this, they offer a gift, a letter of rights that was provided by Moraine, which is worth a sizable value. You could, it's like a check. You could cash this in
like
somewhere.
3,000 gold crowns or something.
Right. It's a sizable, well, you might say payment, but no, don't say payment with them. It's a gift. Payment would be an insult. Now, we do learn this is a large sum.
Oh, yes.
But likely necessary, as the sail mistress speaks to this, because she points out, surely you're aware that we seldom carry Aes Sedai, and clearly you're hoping this gift of passage would open us up a little more to considering that.
Plus, they're asking them to skip ports, therefore skipping income, and go to this specific destination, which may not be where they were planning initially, may not be what they're prepared for, and is potentially not the best place to sail into right now.
We also discover here in this conversation that the sea folk, by custom, do not turn anyone down who asks the gift of passage, except Aes Sedai. And they usually turn the Aes Sedai down. They will sometimes let them, but it's rare.
Like there have been one or two Aes Sedai they have sometimes let, but it's one of those kind of cases where I go, I bet if I walked up to a sea folk ship and say, hey, when was the last time you guys took an Aes Sedai on the boat? They'd be like, never.
Yeah,
I don't know of anyone who has.
I'm
sure someone has, but
Now, the girls are less than pleased to discover that they don't usually take Aes Sedai at all. It's like, that might have been something Moraine could have shared. Apparently, Moraine didn't think it was necessary to share that with them.
Mm-hmm.
Not cool.
She told them all the things to say to work around that, but not that.
Now, Nynaeve is frustrated that, okay, you're telling us you don't typically take Aes Sedai. Why are we having this conversation in the first place then? If you're just going to turn us down, what's the point? And then Coin points out that's not what she actually said. And so she reveals a bigger picture of what's going on here. They are listening to them, considering this possibility because of Rand. But not because he's the Dragon Reborn. There's something else going on. You want to talk about that, Zach?
So, just like we've heard that the Aiel had their prophecies that they're looking for, he who comes with the dawn, and they think it might be Rand, it might be the same person as the Dragon Reborn, those prophecies. Apparently, the Sea Folk also have their own prophecies, and they have a person that they're looking for, the Coromor. And it has its own signs and possibilities, and they think it might be Rand.
Yeah. We learn a little history from them here, that the Sea Folk didn't exist before the breaking of the world. When that epic cataclysmic event happened at the end of the last age, some people fled from the tumult to the sea. They just got in boats and got off the land because the land's going crazy.
Honestly, this is a portion that, as I'm still reading the Broken Earth trilogy, I want to know if there are people out there in the sea, because I haven't gotten to them if they are.
You're still in the first book?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, keep reading.
Now I'm excited.
So they got out to sea. They didn't know how to use ships, but as they describe it, the light shone upon them, and they figured it out. Okay, and they spent years and years, many years, centuries, waiting for things to settle down on land, and they just stayed at sea. And they changed during that time, and they became the Sea Folk. And during that same period, they had this first appearance of their own prophecy called the Gendai Prophecy. And it spoke of a time when this Koromor would appear, and that the sea folk would need to stay at sea, be people of the sea, until the Koromor appeared. And that would be the signal that they could start also coming back to land. And the Koromor would be the person that they would serve. That was part of their prophecy. They would now serve him, do what they can to help him.
So basically, when the Koromor shows up, everything about their life changes and they are completely different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned that they were at sea. They are people of the sea, and they've been all in on that. Jordo dropped something in Discord earlier that's worthy to mention here. So much are they committed to being at sea that they even make sure they have their children at sea.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the sea folk will spend time on their islands, but like when they're pregnant, they'll go on the islands for a while. But when it's time to give birth, they got to get back in a boat, even if it's just a rowboat next to the shore. They must be born on the sea and they must die at sea. That's kind of where they are. But yes, this is all coming to an end. This is going to change now because of the Koromor.
Mm-hmm.
Their prophecy also says that the Aes Sedai will serve the Koromor. So here's what we're at. You've got two Aes Sedai coming to them now, right here where the Koromor, they believe, Randall Thor, has been announced. And okay, is this connected?
Because if it is, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we can work something out. I mean,
maybe this passage can be arranged. Yes. So Coin asks, tell me, why Tanchico? Why is it that you want to go there right now? Because that's not a very pleasant place.
And
What's the
Nynaeve
deal?
spills the beans.
Not initially. She gets snippy. She doesn't. It's like,
Yeah, but she's
you put everybody through the third degree. What's the deal? But yeah, she eventually realizes I'm gonna have to spill the beans, and so she tells them what?
Oh, that they're going over there to hunt Black Aja. That would be a problem for Rand, the Dragon Reborn, the Koromor, all that jazz.
Yep, she specifically rolls that into it. These black sisters who could hurt your Koromor.
So basically, she drops all of the terrifying buzzwords.
Yep, and at that point, the other woman, the Windfinder, Joran, finally speaks up. And she announces they can help them. Indeed, they must help them. She says that to her sister.
So while this one is like in charge of the boat and has been handling this entire negotiation, apparently the other gets to actually decide if they come or not.
About this particular decision. Yeah, she's the one making it. Now, there is a reason for that to be revealed in a future chapter. So remember this. Okay, we're going to find out, just not yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it then. They will be given the gift of passage, but before anything more can be said, they're interrupted by a man barging into the room, talking about trade goods and then stops because he didn't realize there were other people in the room. He was coming to talk to the sailmistress. It's her husband. What's his job on the ship?
He's cargo master. She's in charge of everything at sea, and he's basically in charge of everything at land.
It's an interesting connection here. She decides where the ship goes.
Mm-hmm.
He decides what they will trade.
So they have to talk and work together.
Yeah, he's going to pick cargo that makes sense for the destinations she's deciding. And so that's what he's been doing here. And he's talking about some of the trading that's still going on, and it looks like some things that are going to get set well. And she interrupts him and says, husband, that's great, but you need to stop all of that now. We're going to prepare and immediately leave for Tanchico.
And he's pissed because, well, he just bought a whole bunch of stuff to get sold the other direction.
That's right. We're not going west to Tanchico. We're going east to Shara. That has been the plan. Everything in the ship is going to be stuff we can sell there to then buy things we can bring back. This is going to bankrupt me. I mean, this is going to totally ruin the plan. What are you doing? And she's like, I'm doing what I want. I'm the sailmistress. That is my job.
Sit down. Shh.
So she basically slaps him down, and he basically says, yes, ma'am, and gets all stern. polite, strict, and leaves angry.
He gets very professional, which is not a bad
Yes.
thing. But when you work with your husband and they are strictly professional, there's a little bit of tension.
As he's gone, she looks at the others and goes, "Oh, I'm gonna need to make that up."
She does mention that usually she enjoys
Yeah,
making
making
things
up with
up to
him can
him,
be fun.
but this time it's gonna be a bit much.
and and she explains, because Elaine and Nynaeve are like, well, Elaine in particular, sorry for having been the source of this disruption and causing problems for you like this. And she explains the things you think are a problem aren't really the problem. I get to decide where we go. That is my job. If he doesn't like it, too bad. He
Mhm.
doesn't get to be upset about that. What I'm going to have to make up for is the reasons we're going. I can't tell him.
He deserves to know. He has every right to know. I can't tell him.
I'm going to keep it a secret that you are Aes Sedai, for example, because Ava and Mayer do not like being around Aes Sedai. So I'm going to
Mhm.
ask you to, hide your identities. And they take their rings off and put them away. No problem. And,
Works out for them. They don't have to
maybe
lie.
maybe keep down below most of the time, so you're kind of out of sight. That will help. I'm certainly not going to tell my husband that we're heading to a city that has Black Aja in it.
Yeah,
That's
no.
like... And the final thing that she's going to keep secret is she gives back the letter of rights. She says, I cannot accept a gift in
Mhm.
this case. We are doing this in service to the Coromor.
Things are different. This isn't because you gave a gift and we're giving this back. No, we're doing this because Rand.
Now she says to her sister, now I'm going to put the gift of passage, I'm going to put money into our accounts out of my own personal money. And my husband will not know that. And he, again, says to her sister, and if he finds out, I know someone else who'll be cleaning the bilges.
Mm-hmm.
And the sister laughs and basically says, well, you better hope you don't have to do that because you'll be lost then. You have no idea how to get to your destinations without me. Which is the cue to the girls that, okay, things have lightened up. We're done with the serious talk. Now we're bantering with each other,
Yeah,
and
you
it's going
guys
to
have
be fun.
talked enough. You're now in the inside circle. Well, maybe not that much, but enough that you're not strangers.
And then suddenly the boat lifts up and then rocks back and forth, and it's rogue wave time. Something has happened, tremendously impacting the ship. Fortunately, they're all sitting down in these bolted chairs still, so they just get knocked around the chairs. They don't get flung around the cabin.
Now, at this point, we still have no idea what actually is going on, but we did see this event previously in the parent chapter.
We did. As soon as the ship stops rocking enough to move, both the sailmistress and the windfinder rush out of the cabin and up on deck. And that's the end of the chapter. But chapter 20, called
Yes.
Winds Rising,
Picks
just
up right
continues right there. We've got Elaine and Nynaeve now following out on deck, a little more slowly with their landlubber legs.
Mm-hmm.
And they find the sea folk checking everything out, trying to make sure there was no damage from this whole thing. This big wave thing happened at that same time, as you mentioned, Zach, that there was the big like ringing noise, almost earthquakey type thing that Fail, Perrin, and Loyal experienced. On the water, it was the big disruption of the water itself. And the girls, they have a sense that was Rand. They don't know what happened.
Everyone always assumes it's Rand, and they're probably right.
Oftentimes they are. And Nynaeve turns to Elaine and says, maybe he read your second letter.
This part might not be right, but it's humorous to think about that Nynaeve's first thought is he's throwing a temper tantrum because he read a letter where you wrote him off and really laid into him, setting him straight.
Yeah, that the second letter, can you remind us of what that's about? Second letter, what?
First letter was, oh, I love you, letting out all those feelings and don't forget about me kind of thing. The second letter was inspired by Nynaeve setting land straight. And so it was as far the other direction emotionally as you can get.
Mm-hmm. Now, maybe they'll find out eventually what exactly caused all that, but we're not going to yet. It's not in this chapter.
No,
It's coming. Wait for it, but not
maybe
today.
the next episode.
We move on to the women then looking around and seeing that there are two men on the ship now that weren't here before, that aren't sea folk, and who they recognize. And their thoughts are, what the heck are they doing here? It's Tom Marilyn and Julian Sandar. And they both have like traveling gear. They're clearly ready to go on an adventure. And Coin comes to Nynaeve and Elaine and says, these two have both asked passage. And again, by custom, I can't decline. But, I mean, if you want me to say no... You know, she's hoping she doesn't have to break tradition here, but she's acknowledging, I'm kind of going to leave it to you.
I'm kind of ashamed at your Martin Freeman impersonation, but I appreciate the attempt.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, since they have given the rite of passage and this decision, and really, sorry, not rite of passage, gift of passage, and it's a whole Coramore thing, they give the decision now to Nynaeve and Elaine.
Yep.
Can they come with?
And Nynaeve and Elaine don't answer immediately. They say, well, let's find out a little bit about what's exactly going on here. Okay.
It feels very much like, sure, a legit, rational thought process at first, but it quickly kind of deteriorates almost to what Fael's doing with Perrin.
How so?
We'll get there.
Huh. Well, I think I know where you're going with that, and I was going to slightly disagree with you because the rationale is very different, but we're going to talk about that too. So, Nynaeve and Elaine, they walk up to these two guys. Now, Tom has given Coin the reason he wants to go to Tanchico is just he wants to go to Tanchico. He's a gleeman. He travels. He'd like to go to Tanchico. Julian, however, kind of a little more straightforward. He just says, I want to go where those two women are going. That's it. I just, wherever they're going.
I'm going with them.
So there's no subterfuge there at all. I'm with them. They may not know it, but I'm with them.
They know me. They may not love me, but they know me.
Elaine tells Nynaeve, let me handle this. And she talks to Julian first. Now, what has been their previous experience with the thief catcher, Julian?
Well, they hired him. He betrayed them. He realized that was the wrong decision. He helped Matt free them.
And that's what Elaine starts to lead with. Why should we allow you to come with us? I mean, the last time we saw you, you betrayed us. And he's like, actually, the last time you saw me was when I was with Matt Cawthon, and we helped you out of a sticky situation.
But he goes a little further and kind of implies that certain other interested parties, especially one named Lan, wanted to make sure that he would be along. He also got words from a shepherd that they both know.
Yeah. It says, Lan has paid me a sizable amount of money to come with, to keep you safe, and actually let me know, kind of implied quite strongly, that if I fail to keep you safe, it would be better if I don't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to think Land kind of gave a carrot and a stick, and then this shepherd, Rand, just gave a stick.
Yeah. Basically, do what you have to do to keep them safe, and if they end up not safe, you died trying to protect them. That's the point.
And if you didn't die trying to protect them, you will.
I'm going to kill you. Yeah, that's the mission. Okay, so that's why Julian's going. He's got Lan and Rand. Send him in on the mission. So Nynaeve turns to Tom and says, so did a certain shepherd send you too? He's like, nope. A certain lady that we're all familiar with asked me to accompany you.
Now, I think it's notable a certain lady asked. It's important, the distinction and difference Different
Yep.
respect.
No
Given the
one's
different
making
people.
Tom come. No one's forcing him to. He's choosing to accompany them.
And just simply the fact that everyone in this conversation who actually knows what's going on, which means everyone except the sea folk, knows that that's Moraine. Moraine
Mhm.
asked Tom to come with. And Moraine
Yes.
doesn't ask people things. She tells them things.
But she asked Tom. So both the men then highlight they have a particular set of skills and
Liam needs it.
knowledge that ought to be useful to them in Tanchico. And while Tom is sharing this and going on about some of the things he can bring to the table, Elaine is staring at Tom with this puzzled expression. She feels there's something familiar about him, and it's nagging at her memories. She can't put her finger on it. Now keep in mind, this is actually the first time she and Tom have had direct interaction in this whole series. They've been in these books, but they weren't together.
They may have seen each other in passing, but nothing substantial. At most, it would have maybe been sometime in the stone in the last couple of weeks. But even then, Tom's really been keeping a low profile as much as he can, and probably hasn't really been interacting with the same crowds.
Right. So in this interaction, she's just getting sucked into what is it about this guy? There's something, and even so much so that she feels this compulsion to pull his mustache. Now Tom has these long white mustaches.
Yeah.
And not only does she feel the compulsion, she actually reaches out and tugs on it. And she's like, I don't know why I did that. I'm so sorry. It just
I need to know anyone out there who has mustaches that are sizable enough that they could be pulled or something.
Gleeman Twitch ought to be able to tell us this.
Is this a thing people do or like want to do? Like, I've never understood this. I've been like, okay. I feel like everyone would look at Elaine and go, what are you doing, you freak?
Yeah, weird.
But maybe that's just me.
But she does it, and Tom's like, hello? What? Clearly not pleased to have his mustache tugged, and yet his reaction is a little unclear to Elaine. She can't quite read what he's really thinking. He kind of doesn't show a lot on his face. But the women, okay, they agree at this point. Yes, you guys can accompany us. So long, Nynaeve says, so long as you agree to do as you're told. And Sandar's like, oh, absolutely, no problem. But go ahead, Zach. What are you going to say?
Where I feel like is a little bit of the Fael game. It's very much establishing control and going, you can come if you ask. You can come if you do what I tell you. And
but for reasons.
These positions are different. They have better reasons. They have
Fael was being petty.
Power. I definitely think that they're more justified in this situation. But it also, to me, highlights that what Fael's doing isn't just bad. It's just that it doesn't fit in the circumstance. It can be a good and useful thing that's done. They're doing basically the same thing. But they have different intentions.
So I mentioned that Sandar agrees right away. Tom doesn't. He says, a Gleeman is kind of a free soul, but I promise not to do anything that will endanger you in any way. And Nynaeve's like, that's not good enough. You are going to promise to be compliant to our wishes, or we're leaving you on the dock. What's it going to be?
Unfortunate, because Tom's sitting here going, yeah, but what if you do something really stupid or want me to do something stupid?
I mean, there's no doubt he's got
listen to you to keep us alive.
He's got a lot more worldly wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
He's more seasoned and experienced. He's been in dangerous circumstances. They have no idea what they're getting into, but he's supposed to follow their orders.
He's double, possibly triple their age.
Yeah. But Nynaeve holds firm, and Tom's not happy about it. Gives a few huffs, but finally, fine. I give you my word. I will follow your orders.
And we're going to assume that both of these men are absolute men of their word. They will never break their word. End of story.
So good enough. She says you may both come. go tell the sailmistress that you need a room somewhere down deep in the ship far away from us. And off they go. Now, with them gone, Elaine questions Nynaeve's severe attitude, that treatment that you're talking about, Zach, that you had all this stuff about. She's like, was that really all necessary? What's the deal? And Nynaeve justifies her actions. And her justification is you have to start with men the right way, straight from the beginning. Or else, before you know it, they're making their own decisions, doing what they think is best, even though it might be the complete opposite of what you need from them.
I think this is potentially wise, but also a very Two Rivers way of thinking. It is Nynaeve is in her brain of village council versus women's circle and has this very clear separation. And we see that a lot in the world actually being relevant and true. But the assumption that it is a Nynaeve thing. It's not necessarily accurate to what we're going to see.
Sure. Yeah. Now, part of this also comes with Nynaeve that she doesn't entirely trust these men. Yeah. She has some reasons for that. One of them is, do they even know why they're coming along?
What if they find out Black Aja later on, and what if their loyalty wavers?
She's pretty sure from their attitude, their pretty easygoing approach here, that they have no clue what they're getting into. So, yeah, they're going to need to listen to us. But also, she got Julin, who's already betrayed them once.
Oops.
Okay. Trust issues there. Now, was it really his fault?
Questionable. I mean, like, he didn't know all the details, and he was led to believe things where it was like,
see, they didn't tell him everything back when they hired him. So it could be, you could say it's the women's fault in the first place.
However, that's also kind of victim blaming and going, it's your own fault for getting betrayed and kidnapped.
It's your own fault for not giving all of the vital information that ends up, therefore, going badly.
There were mistakes on both sides. And I think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to entirely blame the women for Julin's actions.
I'm more on Team Julin on this one. I'm sorry.
Julin took a contract, and then he betrayed that contract. And even if
he was compulsed, he had no control.
We don't know that confidently.
I think that was pretty clearly implied back in The Dragon Reborn.
It's possible he was in some way minorly compelled, but we don't know necessarily what people's abilities are in that realm. It's not something that is really
Leandrin was part of it, and we do know she has that ability.
No, we know she has some small level of it that lets others be more likely to do what she wants. It is not the same. And I look back to Faldara for that. Because in her own head, we have it that it's not the same.
We also then have trust issues with Tom. Now, why does Nynaeve have trust issues with Tom? What is it about Tom's presence here that causes Nynaeve to want control, to question his judgment?
It's nothing about Tom. It's the fact that Moraine went and talked to him. She doesn't trust Moraine, plain and simple.
She literally says she trusts her barely more than Leandrin. Like, oh, that's cold.
But when you think about who's caused problems for them, really, Leandrin's caused direct problems for them. Moraine is kind of the source of all of this, everything.
Elaine speaks up for Moraine, though, and says, she knows what has to be done. She has so much more background knowledge here. You shouldn't be distrusting Tom because Moraine sent him. She's probably knows better than we know. Okay? And Nynaeve says,
that's not necessarily a reason to trust Tom either.
But Nynaeve acknowledges, you're probably right. I still don't have to like it. Now, while all this has been going on, the sea folk have been busily prepping to depart, and now they're ready. So they cast off, the ship heads off. Now, again, this is a reminder that Tyr, the city of Tyr, is not on the ocean. It's on the river, Aranon. And this
setup to the ocean.
This setup is very similar to New Orleans in this sense of like being on the Mississippi River. New Orleans is down near the Gulf of Mexico, but it's not at the Gulf of Mexico. There's quite a bit of river to follow, and the river is very twisty and turny, and you
Mhm.
go through a delta.
A delta
Tyr is the
system, the
same way.
estuary, all that jazz.
Yeah, and the delta is a whole bunch of sandbars and islands and little passageways that have been created over hundreds and thousands of years of soil and silt being carried down the Aranon and piling up. It is tricky to navigate. So Tyr has a rule, has a law, that if you come up the river to Tyr, you need to have a river pilot with you. Now, river pilots are a real thing. Someone who comes on your ship and navigates for you.
Mm-hmm.
We have it here in Portland because the Columbia River does the same thing. It's a little tricky getting between the ocean to Portland. So there's a river pilot who'll get on out there in Astoria and bring you all the way into Portland and the other direction as well.
It's just that little bit of something going, hey, you don't want to wreck your boat. We don't want to deal with the mess of you wrecking your boat.
Yep.
We know the area. Let us steer for you. And then you can be on your way.
So there is a Tyrian pilot who got on board just before they left, and he's sitting there irritated, frustrated, maybe a little bored because they're not listening to anything he says.
No.
These are the sea folk. They don't need your help, but they follow the rules. So he's on board, but they're not paying any attention. They know where they're going.
You're allowed on the boat, but also sit down and shut up.
They get to the end of the delta. A little rowboat comes out from one of the islands and here to pick him up now. They pay him. Off he goes. They didn't use him at all, but they followed the protocol.
Some of the easiest money he ever earned. He just didn't have that in his brain, I guess.
Part of him may have been, though, but you're going to... Oh, no, but we can't go that... Wait, no, you need to listen to me or it's going to be bad. Or maybe he was seasoned enough to know it didn't matter.
If you really know what you're doing and someone else knows what they're doing and they do something completely different than the way you do it, it can be bothersome. It makes no sense from an outside perspective why that would be annoying, but it is.
Now, with the guy off the ship, they're free and clear to hit the open water now. And while many trade vessels kind of hug the shoreline, this is a sea folk raker. This thing is built for the ocean. So it heads out, leaves shore behind. And as soon as they can't see land, off come the shirts. The women join the men in being bare from the waist up.
Now, not that part. That's not the part I'm going to actually talk about loving specifically here. But I do love a piece of what you said.
Wait, then I should finish on what I want to love about that, though.
Go for it.
And then you can go back. And that is that Elaine sees this happen, and she feels a little awkward, all the women going bare-chested. But her biggest concern is, okay, they have their own way. Just don't ask me to do that, okay? But Julian is there, and she sees him as hilarious because he can't figure out where to look. He's like, oh.
Is it rude? Is it?
And finally, he just goes below decks because I can't handle this. So that was funny. Now, please share your thought.
I just love the little piece of like historical accuracy that ships hugging the coastline because they're not made for it. Especially night sailing is not something that was really common or anything. It's dangerous out on the open ocean, especially for ships that are not necessarily made for it. So a lot of trading vessels and stuff do the whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yep.
And it's why like the Mediterranean Sea is perfect for that older sailing vessel kind of trade. But a lot of the bigger, broader trade didn't get explored until navigation, sea technologies advanced.
Right. Yep. RJ did his homework. Yay.
Granted, that's easy homework, and I don't think I taught anyone anything, but it was accurate, and I like it.
So when Julian goes below decks, everybody else is below decks, she thinks, but she's going to stay out. This is amazing. She's never had this chance to go out on a sailing vessel out in the middle of the ocean. She's loving it. She's sucking in the experience. They see dolphins. She's like, dolphins! I don't know if she knew what dolphins were, but she sees them and they're like, that's cool. And just the smell of the open air, seeing the ship. I mean, we've done this. We've been out on the ocean. It's fun to just sit there and watch the waves go by. It's something different. And then she starts wandering around the ship and just kind of seeing everything going on as they run this cool ship out in the ocean. And she comes upon Tom as she's doing this. He's doing the same thing. He's sitting there just looking at the dolphins, watching it go by. And they strike up a conversation. Again, they haven't spent a lot of time together before this. We pick up a few pieces of extra information that we can talk about here now. One is that they're agreeing to how they'll refer to each other. So he will go by Tom. She goes by Mistress Trakand or Mistress Trekand. And I wanted to know which way you like to say it.
I expected 2 options. I didn't expect those 2 options.
What option do you have?
I expected Trakand or Trakand. I didn't expect Trakand.
Well, it's kind of the trailer.
Me feel like you're
trailer
trying to
trash.
say no,
the Trakand.
Crackhand, it's no. I'm okay saying Trakand. I'm down with what you would normally.
Well,
do
it goes
inside.
more with how I like to say Galad, even though he's not a Trakand.
He's not a Trakand.
But it's the same style of elevated speech. So okay.
I don't care that much how
Mistress
we say it.
Trakand.
I'll go with your way. I just can't believe you wanted to call her Mistress
Trakand. I didn't want to call her that. I was throwing you a bone. Tom, as they continue to talk, is getting kind of deep and philosophical about the events of the day, the ending of an age, what people may remember in the future, and brings up some of the things from the past as evidence. Stories that he's told before that probably are completely wrong, is what he's saying. Things that have been distorted or changed with the passing of time. And he brings up a few we've heard before back in the Eye of the World, but since he references them again, I thought I'd toss them in here and say, what do you think again? So one of them was Mosk and Merc fighting with spears of fire. What's that a reference to?
Moscow and America.
And
the Cold War, basically.
Right. Elsbeth, Queen of the whole world.
Queen Elizabeth and imperialism.
Do you remember who Anla, the wise counselor, refers to, Zach? Because this real world reference was something before your time that I don't think anybody even remembered when you were around. I won't
hold in my brain initially.
Our listeners in suspense. Anne Landers, who used to write a advice column on things like etiquette and manners, and people could write in, Dear Anne, I've got this problem in my life. What would be the best way to handle it? And she'd give advice in this column that was syndicated in all sorts of papers.
What I have in my brain is a Dear Abby column that is basically the same thing. Was that after? But it was the successor?
Dear Abby was probably after. I think Anne Landers was first.
Exactly. That's what I'm kind of thinking. I'm just like, I just know the later version.
In pondering these mysteries, Tom hilariously also makes this comment. As well ask what sort of animal ivory comes from, or what kind of plant grows silk, unless that comes from an animal too.
It does.
Yeah, and what does this tell us? This is giving us an insight again to the people of this land.
It again tells us that things like rhinos and elephants exist, but not
here.
What our people actively see.
No zoos, no circuses that they're familiar with have had these things. And likewise, silk comes mysteriously from elsewhere. They don't know really where it comes from.
However, they do have silk and ivory, and most likely get it from the sea folk, from somewhere else.
Yes, and they used to get it from the Kyrianids as well, because they do know it comes from lands on the other side of the Io Waste. That's how they've gotten the stuff before. And Elaine mentions, maybe you should ask the Athenier here about those things. Maybe they'll have answers. And Tom says, well, actually, they don't know much more than where they come from, because the locations on the other side of the waste where they go to trade, Tom knows this, that they're very specific locations that are ports for trading. And you don't get to go beyond those ports, and you don't get to see the land beyond those ports. Those people are very secretive. They've created these few spots. And if you try to land or go somewhere you're not supposed to, you're never seen again.
And even if that weren't the case, the sea folk don't really have a reason to go further. They don't really want to go explore the land.
That's true.
They just want to get back to sea.
I mean, they do go up rivers sometimes, as they've done here to Tyr, but don't be going up rivers in that land over there. That's not going to end well.
Doubt it's very common that they're going to go upriver enough to be suddenly up in the borderlands from down in Tyr, just because there's too much just land.
Yeah. The Kyrianin also, when they used to go across the Iowa Waste to trade with those people, likewise, it was one place they went to, right on the border. This was the trading town. They never got to see anything of what was beyond the town. That was forbidden.
People apparently understand the economic import and necessity of having trade with external peoples. However, have no interest in actually having anything beyond that kind of relationship.
Now, I know there's a real world analog for this, and that was how China used to handle trade. Europeans would come, they could come to these specific locations, and they never got to know anything else about China. It was, nope, we'll show you what we want you to see, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly RJ is borrowing from that. And Silk, it's kind of right there. It's kind of on the nose. Elaine shares something that Tom didn't know about that land, though. She says the cargo master had said the ship was headed that way to Shara. That's the name he said. And Tom's like, Shara. I've never heard of Shara. I wonder if that's the name of the land, if that's a particular city they were going to. Maybe there is something I can learn while I'm on this ship. Now, we want to point out, again, spoiler alert, everything that was just revealed here is important. There's reasons all of that was laid out. You have no context to understand yet why, but don't forget this information.
Yeah. Don't forget Shara. It may come up again.
It may. It may. The whole interaction between Tom and Elaine, though, leaves her a bit unsettled because she's still getting these weird feelings about Tom.
Yeah, she still wants to pull those mustaches, and it's like, stop being a creeper, Elaine.
And the way he's interacting with her, it feels off. Not what she ought to expect. It's more like he's talking to her like an understanding father to a daughter than a gleeman to Andorran royalty, the daughter heir.
See, to me, that says she hasn't talked to enough just nice old people, because that's a very common feeling that you do get if you talk to someone who is actually cares, period, and older enough to be that age. Like, you get that.
But when she ties that in with these feelings that she can trust him and that she wants to tug the mustache, it's just making it all kind of, I don't know what's going on here. And so she excuses herself then. That's enough with Tom. And she moves to a different part of the ship. And she ends up making it to the stern, which is the what part of a ship, Zach?
The stern is going to be the back.
Yes. And in the back, she finds the wind finder. Sail Mistress isn't around at the moment. And there's, a couple other of the sea folk there, but she sees the wind finder at the very back of the ship, looking behind the ship and doing something Elaine instantly recognizes because she's glowing. She's glowing with Sidar. She is channeling. And Elaine, of course, as an Aes Sedai, as a channeler, can see what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
She sees her weaving huge columns of air and water to do stuff in the air to create wind, and makes this massive wind that gets the ship moving like turbocharged.
I like to think it's a step further, just because if it's air and water getting woven together, I'm like, this has got to be very directional wind, but also creating maybe like a current that is pulling through the water as well. Something that is going to speed the boat up in any and every way possible.
And yeah, it's like they're on Nitro, man. Now they're going. And when Joran finishes, she turns around and she's not surprised to see Elaine there, but she's clearly a bit dismayed to see Elaine there. She says, "I thought I sensed you when I was partway in, but I couldn't stop right there and then. I had to finish what I was doing. I didn't want you to see that." Okay, and we're going to learn now what the whole deal is.
This is why Aes Sedai don't get allowed on these ships usually.
Elaine figures this out right away. She said, so that's why. You can channel, and you don't want Aes Sedai to know you can channel. It's not a problem that you can channel, Elaine says. The White Tower does not stop people who know what they're doing from channeling.
Yeah, but the White Tower also is super controlling and kind of wants to put everyone who can channel under their thumb and influence. And it's like, you can channel, come train. Now you're one of ours, one of us, one of us.
And that's exactly what she says to Elaine. This is why we've kept it secret. We don't want to be under White Tower control. And you guys are going to want to sink your hooks in. We've hid this by actually sending occasional people to the White Tower for training. And that way you don't come searching for channelers. No, we send them as if anybody who can develop the power gets sent to the White Tower.
But they do it extra smart too. They do one or two of the weakest to go. So that instead of being like, oh, Two Rivers, two of the most powerful channelers ever came out of there. Maybe we should look at that. Instead, it's like, oh, they have weak channeling bloodlines or something. It's fine.
We also learn here that not every Athaan Mayer ship has a Windfinder who can channel. Most of them do, but not all of them. The ones that don't are the ones that will sometimes say yes to an Aes Sedai for the gift of passage. But all the ones with someone like her always say no, which is why she was the one that made the choice earlier and said, yes, we can take them to her sister.
Now, notably, that's not to say that some of the boats don't have Windfinders or anything, just that not all Windfinders can, of necessity, channel.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely a benefit when they can channel, because you just saw what they can do. Woo-hoo! Yeah. Speed their passage and keep calmness when necessary. And I mean, they have abilities that are very useful.
I want to highlight that just to kind of go, Windfinders, we often are going to think about them as being the channelers and that's their job. It's not. It's a piece of their job. But they're the navigators. They do more than just power the ship.
They also apparently can fight off Shanchan. That might be useful
to some extent.
She does reveal at this point that, yes, we did run into that Shanchan ship and it had a channeler on it fighting at us. She's like, I am sorry now to have learned that that person was prisoner, wasn't doing this of their own free will, but nevertheless, we had to defend ourselves. We murdered them all. So they damaged our ship with the one power, but I managed to set it on fire, and it sunk. The last thing that comes out of this brief interaction, then, the last piece of information that's dropped is the only reason Elaine got to see her channeling is because the Sea Mistress said we need to get there as fast as possible. So while you might have the option to just not channel while she's here, that's really not an option. I need you to do your thing. And so she did it. Hoped she wouldn't get caught. She got caught. Now, Elaine's response is an attempt to be affirming and helpful and says, I will do my best to help protect your secret. I have no reason to run back to the tower and say, they can channel, we should go grab them. No, I will respect your wishes here to the best of my ability. And Joran's kind of surprised. But then Elaine has a follow-up. She says, so we're going really fast, but how long is it going to take us? And she's like, about 10 days. And Elaine's floored because of the distance. She knows they're traveling. Only 10 days?
We look at the
Wow.
map above you and see distance is not drawn, but it's still a larger distance than 10 days. A similar length of journey was what they did from Toman Head back to the White Tower. And that took them weeks to months on foot.
Right. Easily. Months of travel, and they're going to make it in 10 days. But then she says, but while I'm here, would you teach me how you do what you do? With the wind, with the power, what I saw you doing there? It's like, teach you? You're an Aes Sedai. Why would you need to know? She's like, I have never woven power to the thickness, the degree I just saw you use. That's incredible. I would like to learn more. And Joran thoughtfully pauses and then...
why not?
Okay. We'll do it. And that's the end of the chapter, and that's the end of our WAP content for this episode, aside from the spoiler room in just a moment. So, a couple of good chapters. We actually talked longer about it than I thought we would.
But I'm not surprised.
We're kind of hitting the same amount of length every time these days. So
one way or another.
When I do chapters without you now for my other episodes, they'll be like 45 minutes, and we'll know it was all Zach's fault. All right.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
If you're a first-time reader, you're going to want to be jumping out in just a moment. But before you go, again, reminders in the show notes here. You can find all the links to how to interact with us, join us on Discord, support us on Patreon, find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, check out our merch shop, all those things. So be sure to take a look, and please, please, please like and subscribe. And you want to get in on that competition drawing, the chance for a free Frosty mug, get over there on Apple Podcast and give us that rating and review. All right, Zach, are we ready to spoil something?
I'm ready.
Well, then let's...
The spoiler room.
There we go. So I suppose we need to roll.
We do.
See.
I'm using this one first today.
I'm using the monster die today.
Let's see if yours completely crushes mine. Probably not.
I got a 7.
I got a natural 20.
Yeah, there's no way I was crushing yours. Yeah, not just probably not. I didn't have any advantage. I didn't have extra initiative or something. Okay. What are you going to spoil?
See, this is the problem with getting the natural 20 on this episode. I'm not sure what I want to spoil yet. I think the biggest thing I'm going to talk about here is just how different of interactions with the Athan Mir we're going to see. Because we start here and we get a negotiation. We get an interesting Aes Sedai issues, all that, right? But later on, we don't see what we saw here. Because here they go, oh, Rand, Coromor, maybe needs this. Let's do it. And they just like drop everything. And later on, they basically go, Rand, you ignored us. You were our Coromor. That ain't going to work anymore. We're going to do stuff for you. But we got to talk. And
What's
Rand
in
does,
it for us now?
And it works well until he leaves and goes, all right, Aes Sedai, you guys have to deal with this. And they are such good negotiators. Next time we do a fantasy draft, I'm probably going to actually pick one of the Athan Mir for like some of that intellectual side, definitely the planner, negotiator. That role is something they fit better than any other people in this series.
Okay. You know, something that comes with this too, that changes later, ties directly to the prophecy. And that is, now that the Coromor is there, they're going to be leaving the ocean to an extent. You remember later on in those negotiations, they want land.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's about.
Never been something they needed or wanted before, but they're gonna need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's your spoil, yes?
Yes. There's
Okay,
a couple
my
good ones
spoil.
that I think you have room to go for.
Well, I want to dip into Tom and Elaine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so again, this was their first interaction, and yet it wasn't. Because what Elaine can't remember is that Tom, of course, was the court bard in Andor when she was born.
Who
So
also had a thing going with her mom.
he was around. He was a favored companion of her mother, but she was really young back then. So that maybe ended when she was just barely a toddler. She doesn't have any active memories of it, but she has trace memories that are still those impulses of why she feels she can trust him and why she wants to pull on the beard. I mean, she's done that before, the mustache. She's done it before.
As a child.
She's going to learn more about this eventually, but it's going to be an awkward fits and starts because Tom doesn't just want to share the story.
No,
He
Tom
prefers
doesn't
not
want
to talk about those
all.
times. And yet it does influence how he thinks of Elaine because he remembers her as this sweet little child and the daughter of the woman he loved, who perhaps, you know, he might have become more of a thing in some manner, and they could have been almost his adopted kids, you know, in that sense.
What I kind of enjoy is that they never really have a conversation laying all of it on the table. But Elaine definitely gets to a point where she knows everything. She knows that Tom is responsible for her father dying, because she pardons him for it later on.
And goes to make him the official court bard of Andor again, even though he doesn't really want to do that anymore. But yeah, totally. Yeah. So that's it. That's what I want to talk about. We're going to see more and more. There's going to be some awkward moments between the two of them as she's trying to figure out, why do I feel this way? And maybe I got a thing for an older man, or it gets a little weird, but
yeah, in this generational podcast, it's going to be a weird thing for us to highlight. Yeah, nah.
All right. I got nothing else, so I think it's time to run the outro, yes?
I'd love to take a look. Let's take a look at our credits. What do we got?
Well, interestingly, they're the same credits we always see, reminding people to like and subscribe.
Oh, okay.
And of course, we want them to come join us on Discord. We mentioned that earlier. We're fun people, and we're surrounded with a bunch of other fun people.
That's true. Some of those people are even some of our patrons. If you want to be able to join live on Discord, that's where you're going to need to come support us. Come support us there. You can get in on these conversations live and make us and other listeners laugh more than, honestly, either of us do.
Yeah, bring your meme game to Discord. It's always fun. Bye, guys.